This is a fail-proof method of installing a zip on your dress. With this method, you will always achieve a perfect zip on your dress every time. And the first thing you need to do is to put the zip allowance, measure out your zip allowance on your dress. You can make your zip allowance 1 inch or 1.5 inch and rule out your line. You rule out the line for your zip allowance on your dress, like so. After ruling out your line, you put a notch on the two end of your zip allowance, on the two end of the line. Put a notch there, and then you are going to cut your fabric into two. You separate the fabric into two. You know we are working on the back of the dress, so you separate it into two. And the next thing you need to do is to you are going to sew it. You sew down the line that you rule for your zip allowance. You will take it to your sewing machine and stitch it down, after which you will now open up your fabric, open up the back of your dress up, and also open up that zip allowance that you already stitched down. Open it up and press it, give it a good press with your iron. You will press both the front and the back. It's very, very important with this method of installing zipper. You need to press your dress. You press the zip allowance like so. You also press it at the front of the fabric. You press it down, give it a very good press in this manner. Very important, take note. Note that you will use a gathered stitch, that is a loose stitch, while stitching down the your zip allowance up to the point where you want your zip to end. Then from there you are going to continue with a normal stitch up to the hem of your garment, to the end of the back of the dress. You will continue with a regular stitch to the hem of the dress. Now after ironing your zip allowance, the next thing is to place your zipper on in the middle, like so, making sure that your slider, the iron slider and pull of the zipper is at the neck part of your dress, is at on top, and the extra fabric for the zip is hanging out on top in this manner. Make sure that your zip, the teeth of your zip is exactly at the middle of the stitch that we made earlier on. As then you now take your office pin and begin to pin down your zipper, checking to make sure that your zipper teeth is lying down exactly at the center of the stitch that you made, that we ironed down. Then you pin down your zip, you pin it down gradually to the end. Make sure you are checking to make sure that the middle of your zip is lying on the middle of the stitch you made. Use your office pin to pin down the zip. If you take your time with this method, you will not have any need for correction or any error. You know that you have achieved a perfect zip every time. So we continue to pin down our zipper, being careful to put the zipper teeth right on top of the middle of the stitch we made on the fabric. You stitch on the two side of the zipper. You stitch on the right and the left side of the zipper. You stitch it down. You can see what I have. After pinning them down, you use your office pin. You can see the my zip, the extra tape of the zip is on outside of the neck, while the pull of the iron pull is lying right on top of the neck area. Now the next thing is for you to take your hand needle. You take your hand needle and thread and begin to tack down the zipper in this manner. Before we can sew it, you need to use your hand needle to tack it down, because if we decide to sew it with the office pin, we are going to be having bumps, and with those bumps, errors will be introduced into the zip at the finish end of the project. You find out that there is an error, because the office pin are not exactly flat like a thread can be. So we need to use our hand needle and thread and tack down the zipper on the two sides. You tack it down the two sides, making sure you have loose thread at the down part and also at the top of the zip, so that you can easily pull it out. After you have finished tacking it down, after you have finished using your hand needle to tack it down, then we need to remove all the office pin, like so. You need to remove all the office pin. You find out at the end of this project that the little added time that we spend on attaching the zipper is well worth it, because you have peace of mind that you have achieved a perfect zip. This after removing the office pin and tacking down the zipper with needle and thread. Now you can now go to your sewing machine and sew down our zipper. We can go to our sewing machine and sew our stitch it down, either from the right side or from the left side. And another trick to this method is that while stitching down your zipper, you must go in one direction. When you start from the top of the zipper on at the neck of the dress, and you come down, we have to stop, and then when we get to the end of the zip where we want our zip to end, you come out, bring out your needle and go to the top again and start sewing down the other side of the zip. This is me at my sewing machine, stitching down one side of the zip. Then you will now turn your fabric in this manner, leaving your needle inside the fabric. You now put about three or two stitches to cross over to the other side of the zipper teeth. Then you will remove your needle and cut off your thread. You remove your needle and cut off your thread. Then you go up again to do, in order to sew the other side of the zip, you go up again and start, making sure that you do not start at the exact beginning of the zip. Make sure you leave about 2 inches when you are stitching down the zip, and stitch down to the end of the where you want your zip to end. Also leave your needle inside your dress and turn your fabric. Also climb over to the other side with 2 or 3 stitches. So you can run it over and put a back stitch once or twice. Then you bring out your fabric from there, and this is what I have. This is what I have after stitching down the two side. Remember, we did not start from the beginning. I left about 2 inches at the upper part of the zip on the two side, in order for us to be able to finish the zip, to finish it neatly. And I like to always cut off the top of the zip, the hard part, the finished part of the zip. I like to cut it off before sewing down the extra fabric of the zip. After cutting it off, I will now fold the extra zip tape, extra fabric of the zip. I will tuck it behind the sewing the zip allowance and stitch them down from the top. You can see the remaining part of the zip. But before I go to my sewing machine to show us how we are going to finish the top of the zip, we need to remove the stitches we made, the gathered stitches we made on the fabric before we install the zip. And if you have a seam ripper, you can use it. But if you do not have, all you need to do is to open your zip a little, pull your fabric apart and begin to pull out the stitches. You pull it out, open your zip a little and pull the fabric apart, pull out your stitches with your hand, and on like that until you get to the end of where you stop your zip, and that will open up the zip. You can see what I have after separating the stitches. Now this is what we are going to work on. We are going to work on the beginning of the zip. You will tuck in the extra fabric on top of the zip behind the zip allowance, and you will sew it down. I also like to remove the stopper at the top of the zip after I must have sewn it down like this. I like to remove the stopper in order for me to be able to tuck in the tape, the zip tape at the top of the zip very well without the stopper disturbing or causing the sewing job not to be neat. So I use my scissors to remove the stopper. I now tuck in the remaining zip to the back of the zip allowance and stitch it down. I'll go to my sewing machine now and demonstrate all I'm saying. Now, the next thing is to you open up the zip, turn it to the other side, and take. You can see the extra zip tape on top. Then you fold it, open up the zip allowance, fold it inside it, and close it up on each other and stitch down like so. Just put a bit of stitch around two stitches up to the place where you started sewing earlier on. Back stitch like two times. We also do the same thing to the other side. You tuck in the extra tape allowance on top behind the zip allowance and fold it over in this manner and also stitch it down, back stitching twice. And that marks the end of the sewing project. You can see the finished work, how neat it is. You can see the neckline, very accurate, no mismatch neckline, no nothing is jutting out. You can see that we have a perfect work. The first time we try this is worth spending that little extra time to achieve it. Please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much. God bless you.